Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns. Hello, this is Kim Howerton, and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is episode number 163, and we're going to talk about the danger of dogma. For a lot of us, we started on our health journey, myself included, in a certain way. So when I started losing weight many years ago, I was doing a ketogenic diet and what I would call more of a traditional ketogenic diet. I was eating about 85% fat in that diet, which is what I would call a high fat ketogenic diet. At the time, that was the popular way to do it. I wanted to do it the way the popular kids did. And so I was doing it that way. And I was sort of afraid of protein and all that good stuff. And I learned a lot over the years about what works best for me. And so what was once sort of, I have to fit in the parameters of what I call keto, eventually became, I don't care if it fits in the parameters of keto. Does it serve me? Right? Does it serve my body? Does it serve my goals? And from there, I transitioned to just eating the way Kim eats. And that is basically a higher protein, moderately low carb, moderate fat approach. So protein is my most important macro. It's not always my highest percent. Like if you talk about macros as a percent of calories, fat is probably still the majority most of the time, but I'm much higher protein and much lower fat than when I started. Now I would say maybe I'm like 55 to 60% fat a lot of the time, whereas I was like 85%. Very different numbers, right? When I made that transition, I did it sort of over several years to figure out what works best specifically for me, eat in the pattern that works for me, and that was good. And I think this is a process we all go through, whether we choose to stay, maybe we're like, no, I'm going to go carnivore. I'm going to go ketovore. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it that way. However you decide to eat, you eventually, unless you like torture, settle into a pattern that you feel like works for you. Both works for you in terms of you like eating that way. That's very important. And two, you settle into this pattern that gets you the results that you want. Right? So those are kind of the two criteria to me. You like it and it works. I don't know that we need any other ones. Goes without saying, hopefully, but I'll say it anyway. And it's healthy, right? It's good for you. You feel good and it gives you all the nutrients that you need and keeps you as healthy as possible. That's a baseline as well. But, just mentioning it in case that was not coming to anyone's attention. And then you kind of go about your pattern. And so if you're at home, you're living your life, you're just eating the way you eat. But then something will happen, maybe, that will remind you that there's other ways. I don't know. So I'll give you the example that will make this a lot clearer. So what did I experience in my life? Well, I went to a couple of conferences and I was around other people eating in ways that I used to eat that I don't eat anymore. So higher fat, less carbs, generally just a lot more fat. That's the biggest one. And I found myself sort of feeling a little awkward, like, how do I navigate this? And for a meal, doesn't matter. For 2 meals, doesn't matter. But it was interesting not to say, oh, this really messed with my head, because it actually didn't. But it was sort of interesting from like a anthropological, like I'm on an expedition in a strange land and right. And it was sort of like that. I was like, oh gosh, this is very different than how I eat now. And I was like, this is how I used to eat, but this is not how I eat now. And that was just, it was very illuminating. I never had a problem with it. There was no crisis around it. I did find that I was really struggling to not exceed my maximum caloric threshold, which is part of the reason that I eat the way I eat now, because I can eat more food and not go over that number. choices were made, right? I like fat. I don't want to eat less fat all the time. But I found like, where's the level where as many boxes are ticked as possible? Because sometimes I don't want to be lopsided. Because if I ate a ton of fat, that would be nice. I like that. I like butter and fat on my steak, and I like those things. But then at the end of the day, most days I would feel unsatisfied because overall I wasn't ticking enough boxes. Like I ticked one big box and left a lot of other ones empty. Whereas the way I now, I'm like, well, this box isn't quite as full as I would like it to be, but more boxes are ticked. Tick is another way to say check, just in case anyone didn't know that. And so, yeah, I found my happy medium. Everything's a compromise in this world, people, at least for a food addict, right? Everything is a compromise to a food addict. So where am I going with this? All right. So then I came back into town and I was having a coaching session with somebody, and they were really struggling. And we were kind of trying to like piece out what was going on. And we finally got to the place where they had gone to KetoCon and been around a lot of people eating a lot of food, like at barbecue or whatever, and sort of the like heavy meat, more fatty meat approach. And she started seeing the weight go up. Afterwards, she got home and she had talked to me a bit about after going home, saying, oh, I'm finishing off some of my goodies from KetoCon or whatever. And I was like, okay, like, let's wrap that up and like, let's put them into practice. And it just felt like she couldn't get her footing. She couldn't get her footing again. And we got to the bottom of it. And it was sort of this same experience. I said, when were you last successful? When did you last feel successful? And she was talking about how in the last program she did with me, we worked together to come up with a way of eating that helped her feel more satisfied, fuller, less hungry, and start to see some weight loss because she has weight loss goals. And then she said, I think when I went to KetoCon, I like lost sight of that. I knew what worked for me and I wanted to eat in a way that worked for other people. And I get that. The reason I moved away from the way I used to eat, because it stopped working. It wasn't that I didn't like it. It stopped working in alignment with my goals. So I was like, so what's going on there? And I think she expressed that there was a part of her that when she went to this conference, it was around a big group of people eating in a way that she doesn't really always choose to eat when she really wants to see weight loss anymore. She felt wrong. She was like, well, if all these people are doing this approach, then that must be the approach. And so this is where I came back to say, oh, this is something we should talk about, that there is not just one right approach. There is an approach that is most likely to be right now for you. There might be multiple that are right for you, but there is going to be one that is at the top of the decision tree where it's like, okay, but which one meets these needs? Do I have some needs that are just non-negotiable? Some people have a neurological issue, so high ketones, non-negotiable for them. They're like, I have to be in ketosis. That's going to dictate some of the other boxes being checked, right? What your goals are, what your likes and dislikes are, those are going to go into which is the best choice for right now, because it can change over time. But for right now, for today, what's the right way for you to be eating? And I'm going to tell you that the thing that should have zero impact on the right way for you to be eating is that somebody else is doing it. Now, you can like get inspiration from somebody else, or you can get information from somebody else. But just because somebody else is doing it doesn't make them right and you wrong. So I guess I felt like it was important to talk about that. Don't let dogma matter more than your life. Don't think I'm doing it wrong. Don't let your self-doubts be loud. If you're doing it right, it's working. If you're doing it not right, it's not working, right? So, when we trace back with my client and said, hey, when was the last time you felt like this thing is working pretty good? She said, when I was doing it that way back then, when we came up with the way that I ate, and I ate more of this and more of that, less of this and less of that. And I was like, why aren't you doing that now then? And she was like, well, I had this experience and I guess I got off track where I started to think, well, they weren't doing it that way. So should I be doing it that way? So I am here to tell you, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't doubt your knowing. Believe in the actions you're taking and the results you're getting. If you're not getting the results from the way that you're eating, there's probably a shift that needs to happen, either in the composition or the quantity or the something. I don't know, but something needs to shift if you've had a long streak of something not working. Now, that might be the amount of food, or it could be, which types of foods you're choosing, or some combination of the two. But don't let yourself, and this is especially strong in keto, in the keto world, right? Don't let what is keto derail you. I sometimes get people on my Instagram who keto police me, right? I'll post something that I ate and they're like, that's not keto. Now, I get it. My handle has the word keto in it, which probably should change to hopefully avoid this kind of situation. And I want to just say that's not helpful to them, right? Because just something being labeled keto doesn't make it good, right? Now, if I had reasons that I had to remain in a high level of ketosis, we could perhaps have a more nuanced discussion about how different food choices fit into what is going to be able to produce ketones in my body. But, anyway, I digress. But what I'm here to say more than anything else is don't let definitions of what something is supposed to look like hurt you. Now, they can be helpful when you're lost. When you're like, I want to try keto and I want to do it in a way kind of maybe that most people are doing it, to give that a try. I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to see what happens with my body. Fabulous. I approve. Great. Wonderful. But if that then doesn't, if you're at the end of those 30 days, you're like, not for me. Don't just stay there because your girlfriend is doing it and it seems like a good idea and you want to fit in with the crowd, right? Also, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Say like, well, are there parts of this that worked for me? Are there parts of this that I liked? I want to keep those parts. And then what details do I want to change? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you stayed true to a label. It matters if you got healthier. I am not committed to keto. I'm not even committed to low carb. I am not committed to any way of eating. I am committed to eating in a way that keeps me as healthy, happy, and satisfied as possible, which means that I am open to interpreting how I feel and function and how I am in relationship to my goals. And I don't want any of my clients or myself or any of my friends, anyone in the world, thinking I have to do it in a way that isn't right for me so that I can be approved of in this community. That's so sad. Don't do that. Nobody who is a really caring, good person is going to want that for you. Nobody. And if they want that for you, they're not really your friend. Just going to say, because I want my friends to be successful. I don't care what my friends identify as in terms of their eating style. Are they doing well or not? Are they feeling good? Are they healthier? Care about that. So I want you to care about that for you. So don't get stuck in the dogma. And then, guard yourself when you're around other people, not to let them make you feel wrong. Because it used to happen, right? Let's say you've been keto for a while and you found a way that works for you, great. But think back to when you first started keto. Everyone around you eats junk food and whatever. I mean, maybe not, but maybe. And you made a decision. I'm not going to eat like those people. I'm not going to eat that thing, even though those people at the table with me are eating those things. So when I was traveling and I went to a restaurant and I sat down at a table for a meal, I noticed that I made a choice to order the prime rib, which is not my normal order, instead of a leaner steak. Now, I made that decision like knowingly. I was like, oh, I've not had this. I want to try it. And I was on vacation and that was fine. But I noticed that I did that. Whereas in my normal routine, that's not something I would do. And I'm not saying it's not okay. There's a lot of negatives in that. I'm saying it's okay to make a different than normal decision. Maybe you're in a place you've never been before. You want to try something you've never tried before. There's a specialty at this restaurant and you're like, I'm not going to go here again anytime soon. I'm going to try it, right? Any of those perfectly valid decisions. But catch yourself if you're ordering something that somebody else is ordering or eating something instead of something else just because you want to fit in. Oh, I'll share an interesting thing. When I was at KetoCon, just pick on KetoCon, none of this is KetoCon's fault. It's just a location. The Berries and I ordered a bunch of barbecue from this restaurant. And I remember terrible acts, if anybody's wondered. They have these beef ribs that are just scrumptious, unctuous deliciousness, right? So fatty, rich taste, and the texture is amazing. I have very fond memories of these ribs. And I ordered kind of a sampler platter for something, including some smoked turkey, which I'd never ordered from them, but I was like, well, I'll try a little bit of everything. And I tried the beef rib and I was like, well, that's still very tasty. I don't feel as good eating it as I used to. I remember a couple of years ago eating one and being like, that's the best thing in the world. I love it. Now I was like, oh, that was nice, but I only wanted a little bit of it. I felt like I'm a little saturated with that. It's an intensity of it. And then I tried the smoked turkey and I was like, oh, I love this. Now, even Dr. Berry, who does not eat turkey, was like, this is really good smoked turkey, right? But it aligned with both my goals, my yumminess factor, so it was like, oh, this is more in alignment with how I eat now. And it felt like a lock, right? I was like, oh, this checks more boxes. So when we ordered again, I ordered more of that because I was like, okay, like it's nice to vacation and have a remembrance of what this rib or brisket tastes like. And that's good. But I know I ultimately feel better when I have the leaner meat now. And that's a shift over time that I experienced. And I hopefully I'm not rambling too much now about meat, but that was a good illuminating experience for me to say, it's all right to not choose the most luxurious choice just because everyone else is eating it. I can choose the thing that continues to make me feel as good as possible. And again, it's a continuum. Sometimes I might want this, sometimes I might want that, but it's allowed. I'm allowed to think about all the factors in what I choose to eat. And I hope the same for you. So kind of between those two experiences of what I experienced on vacation and then what my client experienced on vacation, I thought, oh, this would be a good discussion point. So I want to hear from you guys, what's the way that you've come to eating that really works for you? And, talking to a lot of people at KetoCon, for a lot of them, it was carnivore. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's awesome. But I want to make sure like everybody's finding their own thing, not based in dogma, based in their personal experience and how they feel and function. And so that's what this is about. That's the point of this whole episode. So thanks for joining me. I'd love to hear from you. Please comment, do all the things, because I'd love to hear what's going on for you in this experience. All right, take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.